What is up, my fine astrolabians? Welcome to the Astrolabe, brought to you by King Pilled. As you can see by my reclined posture, today is a headache day. I woke up with the pinched nerve flared up in my left shoulder, which is why we're going live so late today. I've spent the last couple of hours laying out with a TENS unit. Shout out to my beloved, wonderful mother-in-law for coming in clutch with the TENS unit. Last time she saw me sitting here reclined back on some ice, she said she felt bad for me, so she shipped a TENS unit over here, and man, does that make a difference. If it wasn't for that TENS unit, I wouldn't be doing a show today. I sat here and had it up along my side of my neck and my shoulder, and I was just having a seizure. You know, it's like spazzing out, but it actually helped a lot. So I'm very glad for it. Yes, I'm going to weigh in with an official proclamation here on the debate that's being had in the chat, the hard G versus soft G. We're going to be issuing a formal proclamation today. Let me know with how the audio is. I'm sitting back kind of away from the mic here, so let me know if I need to be louder or quieter or whatever. I'm going to try to do my best to talk into the mic. But I will be weighing in and issuing an official proclamation. This is a debate that nearly broke up the King Pill Discord last night. It raged on furiously for a while, and so I realized that I didn't know this, but I realized I need to issue a formal proclamation so we can settle this debate and once again have peace in the lands. If you'd like to join the King Pill Discord, kingpill.com is the place to go. There's also a King Pill Telegram that you get access to. If you go to the King Pill Discord after you sign up and you go to the general chat, look at the pinned messages, there's a link to the super top secret Telegram, which really is just so I have an alternate place to post, to stream members only streams without double charging my beloved King Pill Discord members. So yeah, that's the place to go. And I also dropped the Q documentary that I talked about in yesterday's show. I dropped that today in the Telegram. So if you go over there, you can watch that. I'm still hesitant about posting it out publicly. I don't want to necessarily get taken down again or something like that. And it was on YouTube originally and got taken down. I think the tides are changing a little bit, and we may be at a point where we can talk about some of this stuff more openly. But so for the debate, let's weigh in. Hit the like button, folks, and feel free to send a super chat. We are on pace for our best super chat month ever. Very grateful to you guys because it's just in the nick of time. Couldn't be a better time for it. So your support is much appreciated. If you'd like to ask a question or something like that, and you want to drop a couple bucks this way, that's very much appreciated. You can also going to the King Pill Discord and signing up there. That's the best way you can support the show. And there's a link in the description to the Buy Me a Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/kingpilled. If you want to just send something to me directly. Okay, so we must weigh in here. So what are the arguments in favor of, I'm just going to say this out front. The official proclamation is that GIF is the proper pronunciation. And you have no argument to support yourself if you say otherwise. Apart from perhaps just that it's a matter of personal taste and you are you're just a follower of the masses, a uncultured, low status person. That's the only case that you can make. And if you want to make that case, fine, that's great. You can feel free to be that, and you can do the hard G pronunciation. But in this here kingdom, we believe in soft G's and hard R's. So GIF, it is GIF. What are the arguments against it? So the GIF people come out and they say, well, it's the underlying words because it's graphics interchange format. It's not graphics, so therefore, it must be pronounced GIF. And I say, okay, well, do you say scubba? Or Lazar? Or, let's see, what's another one? I think, what does NASA stand for? National Aviation, so NASA. Do you say NASA? No, it doesn't work that way. NATO? In no way is this ever a convention that the pronunciation of the acronym follows the pronunciation of the words underlying the acronym. Just doesn't fly. Not a chance. And people say, oh, well, do you say jiv? Or do you say jift? Do you say gingivitis? Or gist? Or giraffe? No, this isn't a convention either. You're just making shit up whole cloth. In no world whatsoever does the pronunciation of an acronym depend upon the pronunciation of the underlying words. Now, you do have what's called an initialism. You have initialisms, which are like CIA or FBI or UFC. These are initialisms where you pronounce it's a title, but you pronounce it according to each underlying word or each underlying the letter that composes it. Well, so if you were to say that it's an initialism that's been shortened, GIF could be kind of slurred into GIF. Okay, well, so if we're gonna treat it as an initialism and then give it a pronunciation because we just get kind of sloppy and we mush it together, well, you're still gonna wind up with GIF. But ultimately, if we're looking for a tiebreaker here, if you want something objective, apart from just whatever we've chosen the low status consensus, rather than the aristocratic particularity, then you might say, actually, that's another one, JPEG. Yeah, someone said JPEG in the chat. JPEG is something, it's like joint photographic something or other. So do you say JFAG? I mean, I might be down with calling them JFAGs. We could do that. But if I just started calling them JFAGs, nobody would be like, what are you talking about? It's a JPEG. Everyone calls it a JPEG. But I thought it's the underlying sound that you have to use. You have to replicate that in the acronym. So the ultimate tiebreaker is the dude who coined it himself said it's pronounced GIF. And what better tiebreaker? Just simply, the dude who invented it said this is how it's pronounced. And if you're going to invent a word and get it into the popular parlance where everyone uses it because you've created something that's so applicable to everyone, then you know what? I say you have the prerogative. You get to define it. You get to define how it's pronounced. So, GIF. It's a GIF. It is not a GIF. Whenever I say GIF, it makes me feel like how I imagine it would be to suck a dick. GIF. No, it's a GIF. GIF. See, it's just elegant. It's aristocratic. GIF. Anyways, so you guys now are aware there is a official proclamation. The formal pronunciation is GIF. We will not tolerate any hard G's around here. All we want is the hard R's. All right, let's get into it today. So some advice for you guys out there. I know we've got, what is that? What was it? It was like 0.03% of the audience is female. Well, for those of you, just stop listening. If you're a woman listening to this right now, just stop listening for a few minutes. We don't want to give away all of our secrets, but the audience here is overwhelmingly male. So I'm speaking to my guys out here. This is 2 ways to stop your partner from arguing.
Here's 2 easy steps to de-escalate arguments with your wife. Okay, so first one, I want you just to start an argument and I want you to watch what I do.
What do you want me to do?
Go ahead. Anything. You're a natural at starting arguments, so go ahead.
I don't know. You haven't taken me out on a date in like a month.
And that one usually quiets them down for at least a couple hours. But yeah, if you just need some
proven
space,
to work,
that's a great first technique. And then technique number 2, go ahead and start another argument.
I don't know what you want me to say. Yay!
Start
Okay.
an argument. You're really good at it. So.
Okay. You told me you were gonna do dishes, and they've been in the sink for like 2 days.
You sound exactly like your mom. And that one will keep her quiet for about a week. Here's 2 easy steps to de-escalate.
So there you have it, folks. You come to the ASTROLABE for relationship advice and grammar proclamations.
My generation is pissed about the Corpo-speak, and I know that the next generation is even more pissed. Like Gen Z is way more pissed about Corpo-speak, and Gen Alpha is just rabid about it.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to start this over again because every time I start listening to this, I know the content of it. I've watched it like 5 times already today, just as a matter of getting it open and set up and everything. And yeah, every single time, as soon as this dude starts talking, I'm just like, holy shit, that is a voice. What a voice the dude second from the top has just one of the most legendary voices of all time. But he makes a really good point here.
My generation is pissed about the Corpo-speak, and I know that the next generation is even more pissed. Like Gen Z is way more pissed about Corpo-speak, and Gen Alpha is just rabid about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to come a point where these companies have to start talking a little bit like human beings, or they're just going to implode.
You're starting to see those companies that are talking to people like human beings are starting to become more and more to prominence. And it's going to be kind of like we're seeing in some of the aging political scenes where it's like the new politics are just so everywhere that the old politics are just kind of fading into the background, silently and quietly.
Immediately when you get the Corpo-speak, people just go, you're a piece of shit. Like, you could even be saying it all completely correct. And they're like, you're a used car salesman. I hate you. Get out. You can see this play out on social media every day, and it's wild to watch. And that's why it's so important. Just be honest. Be like, we're raising the prices because we need more money, because we're a business. Be like, I don't like that. You know, like, don't
It's
be
so
like,
much better.
we're raising prices because we want you to have a better experience and allows us to deliver you. Shut up. Like, shut up. No one believes that shit. You're dumb. Like, just say, I want money. I am a business. I want it.
This is funny because it's like, yeah, I don't know anything about these guys. It sounds like people are saying that the dude who's talking is like some high IQ based dev or something like that. So that's cool. That's cool. Like but these are hardly like ideological. We must abandon the boomer truth regime people. But what they're talking about is boomer truth is like a feature of the boomer truth regime. So, like, people don't have to reject the Nuremberg premise directly to reject the boomer truth regime. They can remain basically like politically agnostic, whatever, like politically normie, and still reject the boomer truth regime. Because that manner of speaking, that Corpo-speak thing is a derivative of the boomer truth regime, and it's like an inevitable endpoint of it. The whole nature of managerialism is naturally going to lead to the Corpo-speak, and so it becomes self-detonating because people don't want to live around that. Like, once it becomes clear that's what it is, it's like you're not communicating with me honestly. So this is a way that the internet is actually a purifying instrument. It has its degenerative effects, but it also has its generative effects, where you get such a mass proliferation of this, where every single organization that you encounter, and you encounter a whole shit ton of them because of the internet, every single one of you encounter is all speaking to you in this really phony, artificial way. And all it takes is one brand to buck that trend and just start being honest and straightforward and upfront. Like, this is what Trump was politically. He's not gonna play ball with the preferred nomenclature or whatever. He's just gonna call it like it is. Just talk about it. But that's not allowed. That can't, because all the great mythologies can't be sustained if people just talk about it openly. They all have to be couched in all these abstractions and which are intended to detach you from reality. So this is another example of how all these different facets of whatever late stage liberalism or postmodernism or whatever you want to, managerialism, all these are all kind of different angles on the same general phenomenon. And it's just got this really dialed in, escalating track record now of being its own self-termination machine. Okay, I got a few scattered clips here, and then I want to talk about what I put in the title here. Elon and Vivek's DOGE plan. They wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and I've got some comments on that. We'll read through that. Mars Trillionaires, piggybacking off of the Starship conversation yesterday, got a couple of very interesting threads. Well, a thread and then a Substack post from Devin Erickson talking about that. Going to talk about the pole shift a little bit. And then there's also, it seems something, this whole World War III, Biden authorizing strikes in Russia, all of 25th Amendment conversation sort of percolating up. All of this it's got my radar up. I'm sending out pings trying to triangulate what's coming, but I think there's something coming. So we're going to talk about that here a little bit as well. But before we get to it, got a few different very astrolabian clips, and this is one of them. This is a perfect example of why the wicked are in such panic with our boy Matt Gaetz, which, interestingly, Tucker Carlson referred to him as, this is a little bit of Tucker hyperbole, I think, but he does the hyperbole for a reason. He referred to him as easily the most well-spoken member of Congress, and it's not even close. Now, I mean, I'd say Thomas Massie is very well-spoken. There's a few others who are, but someone like Tucker holding Gaetz in such high regard is a very good sign. You should absolutely go listen to Tucker's conversation with Russ Vogt, who's likely going to be, it sounds like basically for sure, he's going to be Trump's director of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which is, as he describes it, is the nerve center of the executive branch. And this was something, if you guys remember when we first started talking about Vivek several months ago, I referenced, I think I might have played some clips from him on the Sean Ryan show talking about the importance, like two of the most important roles that nobody thinks about are the director of OMB and the director of OPM. So management and budget and personnel management. And those kind of fly under the radar, but if your goal is to go in and gut the federal bureaucracy, you have to have those departments under control and staffed by people who are genuine, true believers who really get the mandate. So he talked to Russ Vogt about that. Russ Vogt was I think he was originally the deputy director of OMB in Trump's first term, and then what's the guy's name? Mick Mulvaney was called away to be chief of staff after Reince Priebus. I think it was after Reince. Can't remember if there was someone in between. But Mick Mulvaney, who was the director of OMB, moved over to become the chief of staff, and so then Russ Vogt became the director. And he's also one of the primary authors of Project 2025 and very closely affiliated with the Heritage Foundation. It's a brilliant conversation. Like, the dude gets it. He absolutely gets it. He is exactly the type of person that for whatever federal agencies exist, you want them staffed by someone like him. It's a very, very good conversation. Anyways, so it was in that conversation that Tucker mentioned Matt Gaetz being one of the most well-spoken people, or the most well-spoken member of Congress. And this is a delightful little trap that he laid.
I want to know where Hunter Biden's laptop is. Where is it?
Sir, I don't know that answer.
I'm holding the receipt. Now, you're telling me right here is that as the assistant director of FBI Cyber, you don't know where this is after it was turned over to you 3 years ago.
Yes, sir, that's an accurate statement.
I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record of this committee the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, which I'm in possession of.
Oh man, I would cut off my left leg to have been able to witness what went on inside the head of the dude he was questioning on there. I can't remember what his name was. Super chat here from Colin Rush. $5. Thank you, sir. He says, Jif is a peanut butter for choosy moms. It's a hard G or you're a hard R. Well, because you sent a super chat, I will have mercy I will accept your heresy and bless you to continue remaining in the live chat for the time being. But I am compelled to point out that is absolutely 100% heresy, and heresy shall not be tolerated. The only way it will be tolerated is if it's done with a super chat. Okay, this is a funny clip. This freaking goofball here talking about how terrifying Trump and his team are and just making them sound really awesome.
He's
That's really quiet.
flood the zone with these picks and forced Republicans to choose. And I think it's interesting to me that he brought Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. to the UFC event last night. He is, frankly, giving, I think, supporter-based permission structure, and he's made these folks stars over the course of this campaign. I mean, in some ways, it's easy to view this, I think, through a different lens. Like, this is also just a person who won following through on campaign promises. He promised retribution, he promised vengeance, and he promised these kind of figures having prominent places in this administration, and he's delivering it. And for a lot of those supporters, that is the point of the Trump vote. And so I don't think that's the fullness of the electorate we saw on Tuesday. I think for a lot of people, they backed Trump probably as a rejection of the administration and weren't thinking of this as an endorsement of every single thing he's talked about. But for the hardcore base, the folks he listens to the most, they voted for Trump for the purposes of RFK Jr. riling the big pharma, right? And so what they are going to force those Republican senators to do is make a choice on those calls, and they will be doing so with the backing of the electorate. I don't think we can just say that they won't get through. I will believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I mean, and it really looks like ancient Rome here. This is sort of the conquering Republican Caesar who's going into the Colosseum, and everyone's cheering. And he's got his political gladiators with him. That appearance isn't just about him enjoying the applause. He's sending a message to the Senate.
For sure.
Like, not only are you entertained, but these are my people, and are you willing to fight? Because here's who I have.
And are any of us surprised by this? I feel like for anybody who has been covering Trump's campaign or his movement the past few years, these picks, sure, they're raising eyebrows, to say the least, but
a familiar character.
Yes, exactly. They've been with him at all these rallies. They've played a key role in where he's at now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Just imagine, would you, that 1 year ago, I told you that on, what was this, on CNN, they would be explicitly comparing Trump to Caesar and doing it in a non-hysterical way. They would be like fully progressed to acceptance, and just like, you know, they're on the back end of negotiation, just like, you know what? Yep, this is the reality of it. It's so striking to me how they sound exactly like Republicans have sounded my entire life. Like, if I look at what they're saying and I put myself in the opposite frame of mind and imagine this as being some like National Review conservative after the libs just won some huge mandate electorally, and being like, well, you know, see, this is a lot what the American people genuinely believe this. And, you know, it's just incumbent upon us to figure out a way to be able to connect with them and to genuinely appreciate the things that they're feeling and be able to put up a compelling case for an alternative. And they sound exactly like them. It's crazy. But this is like, certain things are just bigger than I don't know, a political ideology. The image of the incoming Caesarian figure surrounded by his crew is just like, it just hits people on such a gut level that even these people can identify it. So they're directly calling out the thing that is the vibe shift. The vibe shift is everyone pivoting and recognizing the power center in the room. That's and they feel relieved. It's causing like a sense of euphoria. Oh, man. All right, finally, we got someone who's in charge. Someone who seems to know what they're doing. Isn't that great? We can kind of relax. We can exhale a little bit. We don't have to be walking on eggshells all the time. That's the vibe shift. And they are, whether they realize it or not, they're pointing to it directly by observing this. Here's RFK explaining his plan to make America healthy again. Now, it seems that generally RFK is a little easier to understand, a little faster.
Hi, this is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm here outside of the United States Department of Agriculture to tell you about a win-win policy that I'll be pushing in the Trump administration. It's a win for farmers, for consumers, and for the environment. And the purpose is to make America healthy again. America's current ag policy is destroying America's health on every level. It's destroying the economic health of farmers by forcing them to get big or get out. Big corporate farms do just fine, while the small and medium family operators are squeezed to the point of collapse. It also destroys the health of America's soil and water by tilting the playing field in favor of more chemicals, more herbicides, more insecticides, more concentrated monocrops and feedlots. And finally, it destroys the health of consumers. Not only do the chemicals pollute our bodies, the same way that they pollute the soil, but corporate interests have hijacked the USDA's dietary guidelines to make natural, unprocessed foods barely an afterthought. That's one reason why 70% of the American diet now consists of ultra-processed food. We're going to change that. We're going to give farmers an off-ramp from the current system that destroys their health, wrecks the soil, makes Americans sick, and destroys family farms. We're going to rewrite the regulations to give the smaller operators a break. We're going to encourage sustainable, regenerative farming that can build soil and replenish aquifers. We're going to ban the worst agricultural chemicals that are already prohibited in other countries. And we're going to remove conflicts of interest from the USDA dietary panels and commissions. I've seen some of what America's most innovative regenerative farmers are doing today. They can literally green deserts. They rebuild depleted soils. Wells that have been dry for 30 years start flowing again. They heal the land, and some of them make a very good living doing it. But unfortunately, many more have to fight the system in order to do what's right. It doesn't have to be this way. And when Donald Trump gets me inside the building I'm standing outside of right now, it won't be this way anymore. American agriculture will come roaring back, and so will American health. If you want this to happen as much as I do, please donate what you can to make America healthy again at mahanow.org. Thank you, and God bless.
This is such a big deal on so many levels. So you've got like the immediate level of the actual physical health improvement effect of everything he's doing. You have the, maybe you call it, is like the next metaphysical level up, which is the spiritual effects that are downstream from that. And then you've also got the narrative level. Because what he's describing here, where you have like these giant corporate interests, and then you have the small local family interests being juxtaposed with one another, and we're going to begin tilting the scale in favor of the small local family interests. That is a model of governance that can be ported into any domain. And in fact, this is part of the entire Trump coalition that has formed, is a bunch of people who want to take that like archetypal model and then transpose it onto their particular local domain. Immigration, same concept. Banking, same concept. Crypto, same concept. Entrepreneurial stuff in general, same concept. The tariffs, promoting the same concept. All of this is all unitedly geared around the idea of stripping power away from large centralized organizations and distributing it, like seeding it in a distributed way throughout society, and then lighting the fires of growth underneath that. So creating the opportunity for growth and then goosing it as hard as possible, as quickly as possible. There's all these different people who are part of this coalition. They all have their different focuses. They have their maybe their particular ideological propensities, but they're all united in this belief that this is the model for, not just because it's like morally right, but because it's prudent. It's needed. This is the only way that each of these individual industries is going to be able to reconstitute itself, to recapitalize itself, and go through another growth spurt. So like there's actually a tremendous amount of utility in having people who are motivated by utility. There's this fundamentally, I think, libertarian tendency to approach government as a concept from a strictly moral perspective. But if you're trying to, especially with the type of government institutions we have now that are so bloated and lopsided, there's this tendency to like want to apply a moral lens to every single decision as the fundamental decision point. And so you want everyone to be morally aligned with you on every single point, which leads to the whole purity spiraling thing. But there's something to be said for having a coalition of people who may not all be perfectly morally aligned, but they have a broad utilitarian consensus around the structure of the government that they want to see. So what we're watching come in now is a legitimate regime change operation. The nature of the regime is being changed. It's being reconstituted completely, and this is going to touch everything. It's going to touch every aspect of the economy, every aspect of the geography, the culture. Everything is going to be reconstituted because the regime itself that everything revolves around is itself being reconstituted. This is great from the New York Times. Brad Cohn tweeted this out, spitting out my coffee after reading this New York Times fact check of RFK Jr. This is from the New York Times. Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer than the US version. But he was wrong. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow 5, and blue 1, as well as butylated hydroxytoluene, or BHT, a lab-made chemical that is used for freshness, according to the ingredient label. I don't. What is going on with with a person who would write something like this? Are they genuinely so, I don't know, mentally low horsepower that they don't see anything wrong with this? Or are they that cravenly disingenuous? It's wild. I don't think it can be AI. Like, I don't think AI would do something this retarded. He was wrong, because the point that he was making is that there's too many ingredients, too many artificial ingredients. But we went and we counted, and this one has this many artificial ingredients, and this one has this many artificial ingredients, and it's the same. It's basically the same number. And then go on to say Canada, the ingredient list is roughly the same, but Canada's has natural colorings, and the U.S. product has. So, I mean, I don't need to explain this to you guys. This is insane. This person, I struggle to fathom how this person can tie their own shoes. How do they breathe unaided? I don't want to drive around on the road with someone like this potentially behind the wheel of a massive hunk of metal hurtling around. We've talked a bit about Jenks. I don't know, heel turn or face turn, as the case may be, and he's having fun with this. I wouldn't trust the guy any further than I could throw him, and as you could tell, you wouldn't be able to throw him very far. So, but you've got Alan Lichtman here, who is the guy who has his keys to the election. And he has his 13 keys to the election that predicts every election. And look at that. I predict the regime guy again. See, it's science. See, I called them keys. Of course it's true. And then obviously he misses egregiously, then says the reason that he missed it is because his model assumed that the American people were rational. But they're not rational. They're actually bigoted. And so his model just can't account for the bigotry. And here's Cenk just absolutely shitting down his throat.
Don't blame the voters. I think, look, we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. Look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
him
and
before
I
the
was
election.
not wrong. And that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be
Who
taking
won?
cheap
Who
shots
won?
at me.
Who
You
won?
want to make your
You
point,
live
make your
in a
point.
total
Don't make it
world of
personal.
denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me. So
Yeah,
quiet
right,
with
right.
your personal
Yeah,
attacks.
come find out again.
Make whatever
Okay.
point you want.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
Look,
make
you
it personal.
You don't know anything. You don't know
You
anything.
attacked me
You're
personally.
so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only been a professor for 51 years.
On this program,
published
I've never been
13
able
books.
to finish a
How
thought.
many books have you published? No, because you're personally
Yeah.
attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to
Okay,
stand
but
for
brother,
personal
you got it
attacks.
wrong.
This is like that meme of the two kids and it's two retards fighting.
Say
You were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just
Don't
finish a
call me
goddamn thought
stupid.
ever on this show?
No, not if you're
Okay,
personally
well,
I
you proved
admitted
it.
I was wrong. I don't need you to call me stupid.
Okay.
Can I just say,
What
it's
kind of
great to see
nonsense
you
is that?
Democrats
Yeah, I
all
know.
getting
Who
along
taught
so
Piers is just absolutely purring over here.
you manners?
It's lovely to
You
see a
need one. Can I
post-election
finish a
harmony as you all
goddamn
come
point?
together
We're
again.
just Alan, right now. Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second and let someone who knows what they're
Not
doing...
if you're gonna personally attack me.
You're so right. You're so
Make any
unified right
point
now.
you want.
So,
I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't boost
blasphemy
your ego
against you?
by
What the hell are
attacking
you?
me
Are you
like that.
Jesus
Just
Christ,
make your
you
point.
loser? Okay, can
Make your
I just give the correct answer for once?
Oh man, I'm going to be using that tall glass of shut up juice line. That is just way too good. There was another clip, I had it, I think I've closed it or something, but there was another one where Cenk actually pulled out some keys and he was jingling keys at him. Oh man, I would love to have Cenk around as a mercenary. And right after this happens, Professor Alan Lichtman's X account has just been deleted. He said he is moving to Blue Sky after facing intense criticism over totally botching the 2024 election. Lichtman had a total meltdown yesterday after Cenk Uygur called him out for not admitting his model sucks. Oh, man. That dumpy old lesbian-looking guy is going where all the rest of them go. I thought this is a real good long post from Jack Posobiec. I know people's opinions are mixed about Pazzo, but I think he's on net a positive. He said some dumb stuff in the past, I think, but like on net he's a net positive. He's definitely loyal to Trump. He said the 5 things President Trump has a mandate to do. We were just right and they were just wrong, by Jack Posobiec. Don't call it a comeback. Donald J. Trump never left. He never quit, he never faltered, he never took one step back. And he took this entire country and this entire movement and millions of people on his back. And he said, if you follow me, I will lead this country to a golden age of epic proportions. And now, after winning not just the presidency, but all 7 swing states, not to mention the popular vote, the first time a Republican has done it in 20 years, he has a mandate. Not just from the American people, but from heaven itself. And the reason for that is obvious. We were just right and they were just wrong. But friends, saying Trump has a mandate alone is not enough. We must outline what exactly he has a mandate to do. 1. President Trump must reactivate the American economic engine and get it roaring again. Frankly, this is the entire ballgame. Americans reelected Trump not just to restore wealth, but to restore upward mobility. In a word, to rescue the American dream. If President Trump makes Americans optimistic about their chances to grow their own wealth and improve their own status in the world again, and does it lastingly, then the rest of his agenda becomes not only possible, but inevitable. Americans remember who broke the economy. We need to be sure that they also remember Trump fixed it. Number 2, there's cleaning up the deep state. When Donald J. Trump walks into the White House again on January 20, there is no longer any reason not to give the likes of Elon Musk the ability to expose and expunge every inch of corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse within the administrative state. And that's just the money problems. The national security state, and particularly the three-letter agencies, must be radically reformed and take serious steps to regain America's trust through unprecedented shows of transparency and accountability for its previous failures and flirtations with extra-legal tyranny. A Twitter files for the federal government is not out of the question, and frankly, it would be glorious if it did come out. After the past 4 years of censorship, lawfare, unconstitutional woke discrimination, unaccountable regulatory actions, and deliberate misinterpretations of statutory law, the swamp has become so rancid that a majority of the American people want it drained. The Supreme Court already gave Congress the right to check it. Donald Trump will make that unnecessary. And I would add here that the more that the incoming administration, the more pushback, the more resistance, the more obstruction that the incoming administration experiences, the stronger their incentive to take this whole process further. So in a sense, any pushback that shows up is kind of a white pill. Like, that's kind of a cause for optimism. If they're going to push back harder and they're going to get more blatant and more corrupt and more brazen, then all they're going to do is entrench the motivations of the incoming administration. And this administration is not just it's not just like Republican politicians. It's massive economic interests with some Republican politicians who have signed on with those interests. So they want to see a regime change. They have plans, they have intentions, they have goals that the current regime cannot permit, cannot allow. They fundamentally cannot coexist. So it's become a clash between, is your regime going to continue to exist, or are we going to achieve all of our goals? Which we think that all of them are absolutely existential and that time is running out. And if we don't push forward with this, humanity's status on Earth is threatened. There's lots of people who've always had these sort of apocalyptic predilections in the past. But there's no denying that things are very different now than they have been before. Like, every generation thinks they're the last generation. Everyone thinks that, the world's going to end in their lifetime. This is kind of something, this is like a natural feature of human experience. But there's no denying that right now there is this blanket of dread and foreboding that has pervaded nearly everything. Everyone's guard is up for some sort of an existential fallout moment. So the forces that are incoming into the rulership class see what they're doing as not just a matter of like, I would prefer my economic agenda over the other one. No, they're like, we're literally on the brink of civilizational collapse. And if we don't press forward with our agenda at all costs, then humanity may cease to exist in our lifetime. That's a pretty powerful motivating factor. Now, it can be easy to get bogged down in the minutia and kind of lose sight of that fact, which is why I think it's useful to talk about it and to keep that sense, that pressing motivation alive. Number 3, he must fix the runaway illegal immigration problem. About this, I have just 4 words. They're all going back. All of them. No exceptions. If they don't have a legal right to be in this country, they're gone. Mass deportation is coming. The Enemy Aliens Act of 1798 will be invoked. The migrants who have murdered, raped, and robbed U.S. citizens since Biden took over will be evicted or shot, whichever comes first. The floods of asylum seekers besieging America's major cities will be removed. the legal farce of birthright citizenship will be revoked. Absolutely based. Number 4, we must end the wars. As of now, the Ukraine war is still ongoing, as is Israel-Gaza. Both must be ended. The authoritarian Ukraine gangster government will no longer be able to take advantage of the United States, nor keep us involved in a war which has no effect on our own people and which frankly looks more and more like a money laundering exercise for the deep state. The Gaza conflict, too, must end, a fact which even Hamas and the Houthis seem to acknowledge. Their revolution is over, and President Trump should take aggressive action to broker a lasting peace in the model of the Abraham Accords, which preserves not just Israeli sovereignty, but stability in the Middle East in general. The goal should not be for America to keep the region peaceful. The goal should be for America to broker a peace which the region itself can keep. Israel's not going anywhere. It's going to be it's going to exist. I'm very partial to Pete Quinones's thesis that the only solution for Israel right now is to become a multicultural, a vibrant multicultural society. That's the true path to prosperity for them. It must happen. The Likud party is collapsing. Benjamin Netanyahu is on his like edging toward the end of the plank. And I think it's a perfect time for Israel to experience a revival of liberal government. The more progressive, the better. That's the only way that they're going to survive, and it's very important that they survive. There needs to be a place for them all to go. They need to go thrive in this beautiful, progressive, multicultural paradise. Number 5, last but most assuredly not least, the balance of trade with China must be quickly and sharply reversed. If we mean to confront Xi Jinping's regime, then the last thing we can possibly do is be economically dependent upon it. American companies must be incentivized to onshore facilities and jobs. And if using a carrot doesn't work, then the stick that is tariffs must be used. President Trump should move to aggressively and unilaterally sanction cheap Chinese goods and stop the nation's rampant intellectual property theft. Finally, President Trump must act to lessen the Chinese government's share of U.S. debt in order to prevent the possibility of economic sabotage. We are now in a second Cold War. It's time to act like it. I will say that if any part of your lifestyle right now depends upon the acquisition of cheap Chinese goods, you should find domestic alternatives sooner rather than later. You don't want to have to do it when you have to. You should do it while you can. There will be those in the media, and possibly even in our own ranks, who call this course extreme. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not extreme. This is what the American people voted for us to do. These are the promises we made, and unlike other politicians, President-elect Trump keeps his promises. We have the mandate of heaven, and in 2 months, President-elect Trump will put on the armor of God for this final, most consequential battle to make America great again. It is our job to make sure we do everything in our power to have his back, for we, the American people, are President Trump's greatest weapon against the entrenched forces of decline, decay, and degeneracy. We will not fail, and neither will he. Celebrate now, but know that tomorrow the battle begins anew. Part of the reason why this is very useful to have someone who's close to Trump, very close to his inner circle, writing and publishing something like this is the sort of thing that I want President Trump reading. And one other thing I was going to mention here was, what was it here? I don't remember what it was. Lost it. All right, let's keep it moving. So Brett Weinstein posted this, and I think he means well, but because I generally like Brett. I trust Brett more than I trust Eric. But well, let me just read this. He says, President Biden should be removed via the 25th Amendment, and Vice President Harris should be impeached for leaving him in a position she clearly knew he was no longer mentally competent to manage. And everyone who assured us that Joe was fine or that it didn't matter because of his team, well, you all need to do some serious soul searching. With all the Russia fear-mongering the DNC and deep state have put us through, we are all now somehow depending on Vladimir Putin's restraint. This here is like, I remember Pete used to say, talk to anarchists about living in Ancapistan in their heads. And there's this feature of the generic political conservative who lives in like constitutional conservative land in their heads. But it's this very kind of naive. It's like oblivious to realpolitik. It's very naive. Because I think I haven't completely worked out the exact mechanics of how this would go, but we had the election that immediately was followed by a big vibe shift. Just overnight, instantly. Libs are in full retreat. Obviously, a lot of their plans didn't work, but we've seen them starting to kind of piece together some tactics. One of them is, well, look, the counting keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and he definitely won, but the margin on the popular vote is getting narrower and narrower, so he actually didn't get a huge mandate. Or, we may not be able to flip any electoral votes or flip the majorities in the House or the Senate, but we can make the majorities much smaller. So we can still execute our fraudulent plan on a certain level. Now, I think, I expected that the 2.5 months between the election and Inauguration Day were going to have drawn out lawfare. I was expecting that. And it was surprising to wake up the next day and just see the specter of it just kind of disappear. But I don't know that they're going to just completely lay down. There's way too many people who are so deeply implicated in legitimate criminal behavior, all the way up to like treason, even by the most normie conception of it, that they're going to try to pull something. And I haven't worked through all the mechanics of where they could take it, but the first two obvious steps to me the first obvious step is 25th Amendment for Joe Biden. Pull him out of the way. You already saw the progressive end of the shit libs talking about getting Kamala in there just as like a formality. And they would obviously love to be able to like stick it to Trump and have him it doesn't get to be the 47th, he's the 48th. There goes all your merch. He just creates a whole new line for merch, but but I'm expecting, I think this whole World War III thing that's been being cooked up, Biden supposedly authorizing these launches into Russia, looks to me like a pretext for getting him out of the way, because it's so brazen and it's so obvious at this point that Biden probably voted for Trump. So it's so flimsy to try to stick this on him. And if you've been following everything else that we've been talking about lately, with the incoming sovereign debt collapse, how close the UK, I read the thing from Alex Craner yesterday about how close the UK came to being, to going bankrupt. Ukraine is already completely bankrupt. Ukraine is gone. Now you have the UK going full kulaks on the farmers. They're building up to something. And I think they know that, they're on the clock, and I think they know they're on the clock, and I think they're planning something. I don't know exactly what they're planning, but I think the first step in anything I can come up with involves pulling Joe Biden out for some reason, and then installing Kamala to do something in the last few weeks. So all of this, like, getting the talking heads, the sort of independent media talking heads, rallying behind this idea of, it's a shame what Biden has done and what he's gotten away with, and we need to get the 25th Amendment. We need to get him out of there to prove that it's not acceptable to behave this way, and yada 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 yada. Like, they're still playing by the rules of the system as if the system is constitutionalism. Yeah, the UFO. Yeah, you guys are talking about alien stories. I think the UFO possibility is a big one as well. But this whole thing with World War III and the 25th Amendment and all of that just screams psyop to me. And I think Putin is like, I think Putin knows full well what's going on here. So I don't expect that he's going to let himself be sucked into the game, but it depends on just how far they push it. Let me catch up on some of your comments here real quick, and then we'll continue on this. Mellon says, yes, they'll try to get Kamala in that way, then declare emergency, suspend election. Aliens may be on tap for this. We need a new invisible enemy. Yeah, see, and here's where, like, I think if they try to suspend it, if they try to suspend the inauguration or something like that, like, every game that I every time I try to get game it out, I keep coming back to, like, it's any sort of escalation they try to attempt is just going to increase the public will for the just unilateral installation of Trump. So I think they're caught in a catch-22, but it doesn't mean that they can't do a bunch of damage on the way down. Another $5 from Colin Rush. Thank you, man. He says, if you get Putin to nuke us, then no one has to go to jail. Yeah, that's. See, I think Putin is smart enough to understand what's happening here. I think he knows full well, and he would much rather have Trump in place, just simply for the fact that then you know the United States isn't going to go completely bonkers. Borp says that, I mean, they shut down the whole damn world to push certain agendas. What makes anyone think they're just going to throw their hands up and give up? Well, I think part of why they might throw their hands up and give up is because they are very soft, stupid people. So when they did that, there wasn't much resistance, but now there's real resistance there. There's real potential consequences. So it gets each individual person on the decision tree has to think extra hard about this, because it's like, if I participate in this whole thing better pay off. And it better ensure that Trump doesn't get in there in any sort of way, because the further I go down this pathway, the more I'm like signing my own death warrant in the long term. So I think that factor is very real. Now, all of a sudden, the specter of consequences looms very large to a lot of the individual actors along the way. But there also is for those who are, you know, they have nothing left to lose because they're already cooked. Then they're likely to get very reckless. So the whole thing, I think, is going to turn into an absolute like monkey fucking a football. It's going to be a disaster. But I expect the outcome of it is that Trump is installed. And this kind of goes back to what my prediction had been originally. And so maybe I might wind up being able to say, actually, I was more right than I thought I was, and I should have stuck with it. Tom Luongo replied to this, and he kind of seems to agree with my instinct here. He says, this is exactly what they want here, Brett. Seriously, Biden didn't authorize any of this, but he's getting the blame. Be smarter, think through the situation. Who benefits here? Not Joe. He made a deal with Trump. Someone else is getting revenge on both of them. That's exactly my read on it. Now, when this started happening, I was reminded of this very interesting speech that Trump gave a few days ago. So this is a speech at the America First Policy Institute, and Trump said this.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important. Maybe you should pass a bill. You have to start my term from November 5th, okay? Or November 6th if you want. November 5th, because the market's gone through the roof. Enthusiasm's doubled. It's doubled in the last short while. And I watched a liberal commentator say, you know, whether you like him or not, there seems to be a beautiful light shining over our country and even over, Mr. Speaker, I think.
So this caused a little bit of a hoopla based on, you know, this person's, he was joking, right? And the libs kind of about it for a little bit and then sort of moved on. And when I first saw it, I just wrote it off as kind of, yeah, I think that he's probably just sort of, I didn't listen to the clip directly. I just heard like the transcript of it. and thought this was one of him doing his kind of like laughing, magnanimous, yes, great victory. I think, you know what? I think you probably need to pass a bill saying that my presidency just started back then because everything changed then. Might as well just do that. Why wait? But rewatching it now, or actually watching it, I thought, this actually seems like a serious proposition. I can't think of a reason why he would say this in the tone that he said it, and I don't know the rest of the context around it. So, I probably should have gone and listened to all that, but hadn't done that. And I don't know if this is actually even publicly available. I'll see if I can find out after the show today if this full thing is publicly available, if this is just someone there who took a video of it. But this may wind up being, you heard it here first, folks. This may wind up being the way things go over the next few weeks is the regime starts spazzing out and a push develops for passing a bill recognizing his term beginning on like the day after the election, granting him the actual powers of the president as recognition of the fact that everybody's already treating him like the president. And we have a lame duck administration full of criminals who are trying to cover their tracks. There was a video that Elon Musk, or a picture that Elon Musk signal boosted on X yesterday of a paper shredder truck appearing outside one of the FBI buildings or DOJ buildings. So I guess the next thought from this would be, all right, if they wanted to actually do that, obviously, if they propose that, the media is going to go absolutely nuclear. They are going to blow their tops, absolutely freak out and scream. You're going to get all the squishy conservatives who are all talking about precedent and formalities and whatever. But the person who probably would matter the most would be Mike Johnson. And what has been happening with Mike Johnson for the last couple of days? Now here we're putting on the tinfoil hat. We're getting real speculative here. I've nothing to prove. I have nothing to prove any of this. I'm just kind of connecting some dots and speculating. But right after around to the time Trump says that, while this whole thing is building up, you've got Mike Johnson trekking around in the inner circle as Trump attends the UFC event. You've got the pictures coming out of him on the plane with Don Jr. and Elon and RFK and Trump. And 9mm SMG says Johnson's going to back absolutely everything Trump wants for letting him hang out. Every picture of him with Trump, he just looks like he's thinking, I'm so happy to be here. He reminds me of a less likable Michael Scott. He says, every picture of him I've seen with Trump, he looks like he's a Make-A-Wish kid who just met Batman. Keep him happy, bring him everywhere, and buy him ice cream. Get him a little multicolored beanie with a propeller on top, and every time the plane takes off, spin it and say, look, Mikey, you're flying. Little guy's having the time of his life. This is very interesting. Like, it kind of stood out to me. I didn't know why, but when I saw Mike Johnson trekking around with him, I was like, that's interesting. They're keeping him awful close. And I figured this might have something to do with coordinating plans around recess appointments and because like if the Senate Majority Leader didn't want to play ball, then Mike Johnson could file to adjourn, and the Senate would say no, and Trump would unilaterally step in and say recess them, and then do the recess appointments. But this whole thing kind of puts that in a new light for me. Because if Congress decided they wanted to move forward on something like this, having Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House, having him on board would go a long ways toward that. Jason says, too many it's probably nothing data points have become the thing that's happening to ignore. Right. So many times it's been like, that's probably nothing. I'll just kind of keep track of that data point. It's probably nothing. And then it becomes a thing, and it just keeps happening. It keeps happening. It keeps happening. It keeps happening. So now it's like, all right, I'm going to pay more attention to these data points when I see them. guess the good news is we get to find out about this very quickly. But here's an additional thing with Mike Johnson that's I think it's telling. I'll play. There's two video clips here. This is from, I think this all happened yesterday, if I recall.
Mr. Speaker, is freshman-elect Sarah McBride a man or a woman?
So there's a new congressman who calls himself Sarah and dresses up like a woman. And the question is Congressman or is freshman-elect Sarah McBride a man or a woman? Here's Mike Johnson's reply.
Look, I'm not going to get into this. We welcome all new members with open arms who are duly elected representatives of the people. I believe it's a command that we treat all persons with dignity and respect, and we will. And I'm not going to engage in silly debates about this. There's a concern about the uses of restroom facilities and locker rooms and all that. This is an issue that Congress has never had to address before, and we're going to do that in deliberate fashion with member consensus on it, and we will accommodate the needs of every single person. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yes,
do you plan on bringing Nancy Mace's transgender bill and putting that into the rules package?
I'm not going to address the plans on any of that. I just told you what I'm going to say about the issue. I'm not going to engage in this. We don't look down upon anyone. We treat everybody with dignity and respect. That's a principle that I've pursued my whole life, and we will take care of this, issue of first impression for Congress, as we will any other thing. We'll provide appropriate accommodation for every member of Congress.
So very, very weak, squishy response. So then it blew up on Twitter, and everyone was like, "This is pathetic. You need to make a stronger statement." And lo and behold, like 3 hours later, here he comes out again.
Hello, everybody. I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear. I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity, and so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts. Hello, everybody. I just want to make it.
So isn't that interesting? Someone's being quite responsive to the base. Yeah, X bullying reps into doing the right thing. Yes. Here's the Elon effect. A couple things from this here then. So it's obviously it ties into the thing we were just talking about, where very clearly Mike Johnson is planting his flag cleanly on the Christian side of this conversation, and doing it in a way that would have been unthinkable just several months ago. Having a prominent Republican politician come out and say, "Let me be unequivocally clear: a man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman." This is part of the vibe shift. This definitely wouldn't have happened not too long ago. And then also, there's basically no consequences for it. But furthermore, Sarah McBride says, "I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and to bring down cost-facing families. Like all members, I will follow the rules as outlined by Speaker Johnson, even if I disagree with them." And this is a reference to rules that were passed that the congressional bathrooms are are for biological men, biological males for the men's bathroom, biological females for the women's bathroom. And here, the Delaware trans newly elected congressman just says, "All right, fine, whatever. I'll follow the rules. I'm not here to worry about all that. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and bring down cost-facing families." This is another big indicator of the vibe shift. The wokeness, DEI, all of that is going the way of the dodo. That doesn't mean that it's not going to still be present, but we're not going to have the whole completely retarded cancel culture, constantly aggressively pushing the envelope at every possible front thing that has happened for the last several years. It's just not going to happen anymore. And this way, they're just laying down. Complete capitulation. All right. Before I get to the DOGE plan, as written by Elon and Vivek, I need to highlight a couple of things for you guys. First one, friend of the show, Mark Clare, says, I've never done anything like this and never thought I would have to, but we need a miracle and some helping hands to try to save my mother-in-law's life. Any help at all is appreciated. So this is Mark's mother-in-law. Donate to Patricia's life-saving surgery. Man, it's already up to almost 23,000. My wife, Diane, and I are humbly requesting help with an urgent surgery needed for her mother, Patricia Gamez, Priego. For over a year, Patty has been bravely battling cancer and recently reached an impasse. She is currently in need of an emergency intestinal surgery due to a complication so that she can continue her fight. Unfortunately, when attempting to get this surgery from the government hospital system in Mexico, she was severely neglected and left with further infections that need to be treated, and the only place to turn is the private system in Mexico. She's currently in an excellent hospital being treated for her infections, and the surgery she needs will run around 800,000 pesos, about $40,000 US. We've done everything we can to help financially up until this point, and now we have to turn to the kindness of others in our circle. Even $1 or $2 will be a tremendous help to try to get this surgery done quickly so she can live to fight another day. Patty is only 61 years old and full of life, and we're eternally grateful for any help that you're able to provide. So, they're shooting for 40,000. They're at 23,000 right now. I'm going to drop the link here in the chat. And let me write here, please donate for Patty. And I will pin this so you guys have access to it over here on YouTube. It'll also be at kingpill.substack.com when I post the show out later to go out on the podcatchers. I'll post all the links that I've covered today, and so the link to this GoFundMe will also be there. Anybody who can donate, very much appreciated. Mark is a good man, and I heard a rumor that he said if we can get it up to 40,000, then he will produce an episode of the Mark Clare Show, and we want that, don't we, folks? So please support our friend and offer your prayers for Patty. Someone else who very much needs prayer. I don't know what else we can do for him at this point, but prayer is a big one. Jeff Younger, who's a recent powerful mutual. He says, I lost all parental rights to my sons. Goodbye, boys. Perhaps we'll meet when you are adults. California Judge Juhas gave my ex-wife authority to castrate my son, James. All contact with my boys must be supervised. I won't do that. I send letters and gifts to my sons. My ex is not required to give them to the boys. I cannot post pictures of my sons. Let my story be a cautionary one for young men. Fathers have no rights to their children. Do not enter the family law system. He said, a number of well-meaning people and some ill-meaning people too have urged me to attend supervised visits. That is a bad idea. It's bad for kids. Supervised visitation reinforces in a child's mind that the father is dangerous, that something is wrong with him. It's also bad for the father. The supervisor can record anything he wants. Whatever he writes down, the court will take as fact. Supervision provides infinitely malleable material for the courts to make damaging findings. It's also very expensive. I have to do visits in Los Angeles County, California. The flights and supervision run to over $2,000 per visit. No parent should do supervised visitation. It's bad for the children, bad for the father, and allows courts to invent false findings to further endanger the father. He says, Hold the Line PAC has posted a petition. Check it out. This will also be in the master thread on Substack. This is a petition. Sign your petition immediately. The Texas Supreme Court allowed Jeff Younger's ex-wife to kidnap Jeff's son James, take him to California, which specifically allows children to get transgender surgery. California has now stripped Jeff of his parental rights so the ex could chemically castrate Jeff's young son James. Please sign your petition to demand that California's courts immediately issue a stay to stop the castration of James Younger and send this case to the Supreme Court. Donald Trump has said he will ban these procedures on minors at the federal level. Until Trump takes office, all children are at risk. It's time to send a message. Tell Harrison Biden not to hurt young James and to protect America's children. So this is a petition you guys can go sign. Again, the link is going to be in the Substack. And he also shared, if I come back over here, a couple of other tweets from some others. Connor Tomlinson says, my friend Jeff Younger has had his son stolen from him by his ex-wife in the California legal system. Anne Georgilas is obsessed with chemically castrating her son James to treat him like a girl. Jeff can no longer prevent her from doing so. Jeff used IVF with Georgilas and conceived James and Jude, twins, both of whom are only biologically related to Jeff. After 5 years of marriage, they divorced in 2019. A Dallas County judge annulled his marriage at his wife's request, making his children illegitimate and revoking his custody rights. His prenup was thrown out. She and the school began to socially transition James in secret. But Jeff had video evidence of James acting as a healthy, happy boy of his own volition when visiting his father. Another judge, Mary Brown, then stripped him of all parental rights. The Texas Supreme Court upheld a ban which prevented Jeff from intervening in the transition process. His ex-wife then took the boys to California on the eve of it becoming a transgender sanctuary state. She filed to have James chemically castrated to get around the Texas court order prohibiting it in 2021. Jeff fought a costly legal battle in California for the last 3 years. In February, Georgilas filed a motion in Los Angeles County Superior Court aiming to dissolve the protective order preventing her from subjecting James to gender-affirming care. Georgilas' motion cited the opinion of psychologist Brigid Mariko Khan, who stated that James is interested in puberty blockers, estrogen, and bottom surgery. But James does not have a treating physician. He was diagnosed with LGBTQIAS2+ by social worker Danielle Hurwitz on April 23, 2024 through a gender assessment, 2 months after Georgilas filed the motion. California Judge Michelle Kazadi then hid the case from the public in the lead up to trial and blocked lawyers from accessing case documents. The Los Angeles Superior Court claimed to have lost the Georgilas versus Younger case file on the 22nd of July ransomware attack after initially intentionally deleting the public record of the file on the 30th of May. Judge Shelley Kaufman also misrouted orders to the wrong address. Jeff is a good man. From the few hours I spent shooting with him this year alone, I can tell you he's been a great father. He's done all he can to spare his sons this twisted fate. We can now only hope that the Trump administration's national ban passes before James is irreversibly harmed. I hope Elon is aware of the story after his own son fell prey to this ideology too. And the original tweet back here was quote tweeted. I don't know if it's going to be here at the top when I open it, but it was quote tweeted by Bill Ackman. And shout out to Don the Pleb. Bill Ackman quote tweeted and was like, is this real? And Elon said it's really messed up. So hopefully, yeah. He said there are many such situations. It's utterly psychotic. Peachy Keenan said pediatrician Ann Georgilas had twin boys via egg donor. They are not her biological children. Then she decided to turn one of the boys into a girl at age 3 and divorce her husband who objected to this. He is now 11 or so and is probably already chemically castrated. The legal system in Texas and now California has kidnapped these boys and is allowing her to inflict whatever grotesque abuses she wishes. The only party vilified is the father. So go sign the petition. Doing whatever I can to keep this story in the public eye. And I just got to say, like, if you as a Christian have philosophical priors with respect to the government that tell you this sort of thing just has to be tolerated because anybody who wants to step in to change any of these sorts of things, because all of this can be changed. This sort of behavior can absolutely be outlawed, banned, prosecuted, and punished. It's pathologically insane to suggest otherwise. This any sort of like libertarian conception of small government or whatever. If it leads you to people could just do whatever they want, like this, like there's something that's very obviously wrong and broken in your philosophical framework. This boy is being abused by his mother and having it sanctioned by courts because Christians subscribed to a political ideology that encouraged them to withdraw from the political system. Christianity is not libertarianism. Libertarianism is demonic. This is the outcome of the spirit of libertarianism. I don't want to hear your economic arguments. I don't give a shit. I know them all. Mr. Westford says, I want a government that fucking governs. Yes. This type of behavior just cannot be tolerated. Children cannot be treated this way and have it legally sanctioned. Have it officially sanctioned, institutionally sanctioned, whatever. And whatever is necessary to prevent that from happening must be done. And to attempt to make some sort of Christian case about why you shouldn't be involved in something like that is just pathological, man. The more libertarian you are, the less Christian you are. Yes. This is an interesting thought from Kate. She says, I'm wondering if the mother is doing this out of resentment for not being able to give birth to them naturally and for Jeff being the only biological related parent. I wouldn't be surprised. Even if she wouldn't necessarily be able to articulate that, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, Orthodox cross-shirt on the kid. Jeff is Orthodox. I don't remember if he was before all of this or if he converted in the midst of all of it. I'm sure someone down here will know. Yeah. All I can do from this point here is just put whatever support I can behind the legal efforts to ban and punish this sort of behavior and pray for him. So here's Vivek talking about, he says he'll be pausing his own weekly podcast to launch a new show with Elon called the DOGE Cast.
As part of that process, I'm now all in. I'm focused on making sure that we actually accomplish the goal rather than just talking about it. So to that end, for the next little bit, I'm going to put a pause on the weekly Truth podcasts. I've enjoyed doing it this year. It's been incredibly fun and entertaining. I've learned from a lot of the guests, and I've enjoyed communicating with all of you. We're going to put that on pause for a little bit. And as you may have heard, Elon and I are going to start a separate track of DOGE casts that explain exactly what we're doing to the public to provide transparency in what is a once-in-a-generation project. We want to bring the public along with us, to lift the curtain, to take us behind the scenes of what actually that waste, fraud, and abuse in government looks like. However bad you think it is, it's probably worse. But we don't want to do this to just expose the problem. We want to do it to solve the problem. So stay tuned. We're going to have more information about when those DOGE casts are going to begin. We are neck deep right now in transitioning to the new dawn on January 20th. But in the meantime, I thank all of you for your journey this year, for joining us. I've loved doing the truth, and we're just going to put it on pause for a little bit to hopefully embark on this new chapter of saving our republic. Stay tuned for further details, and we'll be in touch.
Just to respond real quick, a couple of comments here. Number one, Witt says, talk about the absolute archetype of the devouring mother. Yes, no kidding. And Screwed Up Rebellion said, that's not even the kid's bio mom either. Yeah, so the kids were conceived via IVF. So with another egg donor. So the mother has no biological connection to the children. It was Jeff's sperm and an egg donor that created the children. She has no biological connection to them whatsoever. And yet she's been granted exclusive legal control of them. Okay. So what's very interesting, what's become clear about this, about the DOGE, is that it is not an actual government agency. They are, Elon and Vivek are not going to be federal employees. It's going to be an independent agency, as far as I can tell. So they're creating their own NGO. They're creating their NGO that will be the predator of the NGOs. So I kind of get the sense that they're creating a whole new thing. And if it was generic Republican politicians doing it, I'd probably be extremely skeptical about its actual upside. But I don't feel like I don't feel like signing up to get in line behind all the other people who have said this thing Elon Musk is undertaking is foolhardy and will never be successful. Because that's a line of some very disappointed people, and I don't want to be in that line. So I'm fascinated to see how they wind up going about this. We'll get some clues from this piece that was published today in the Wall Street Journal, written by Elon Musk and Vivek. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the DOGE plan to reform government. Following the Supreme Court's guidance, we will reverse a decades-long executive power grab. Our nation was founded on the basic idea that the people we elect run the government. That isn't how America functions today. Most legal edicts aren't laws enacted by Congress, but rules and regulations promulgated by unelected bureaucrats. Tens of thousands of them each year. Most government enforcement decisions and discretionary expenditures aren't made by the democratically elected president or even his political appointees, but by millions of unelected, unappointed civil servants within government agencies who view themselves as immune from firing thanks to civil service protections. This is anti-democratic and antithetical to the founders' vision. It imposes massive direct and indirect costs on taxpayers. Thankfully, we have a historic opportunity to solve the problem. On November 5, voters decisively elected Donald Trump with a mandate for sweeping change, and they deserve to get it. President Trump has asked the two of us to lead a newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to cut the federal government down to size. The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abetted it for too long. That's why we're doing things differently. We are entrepreneurs, not politicians. We will serve as outside volunteers, not federal officials or employees. Unlike government commissions or advisory committees, we won't just write reports or cut ribbons. We'll cut costs. And I think on its outset, the idea of them being outside volunteers and not federal officials or employees, you could look at that on one hand as being so their role is just kind of formal, but doesn't really have any sort of impact. Or you could look at it as they are free to move and act and do things that a federal official or employee may not be able to. We are assisting the Trump transition team to identify and hire a lean team of small government crusaders, including some of the sharpest technical and legal minds in America. This team will work in the new administration closely with the White House Office of Management and Budget. Ding, ding, ding. Russ Vogt. The two of us will advise DOGE at every step to pursue three major kinds of reform: regulatory rescissions, administrative reductions, and cost savings. We will focus particularly on driving change through executive action based on existing legislation rather than by passing new laws. So they don't have to go through Congress. They don't have to deal with that whole rigmarole. And by doing this with an outside agency, they're able to effectively serve as kind of like an oversight or an independent investigative body that can work in concert with the actual organization, but it doesn't have to be subjected to all the same paper trail obligations and hierarchies and wading through all the bureaucracy. They're able to operate much more surgically as a separate agency. Our North Star for reform will be the U.S. Constitution, with a focus on two critical Supreme Court rulings issued during President Biden's tenure. In West Virginia versus EPA 2022, the justices held that agencies can't impose regulations dealing with major economic or policy questions unless Congress specifically authorizes them to do so. In Loper Bright v. Raimondo 2024, the court overturned the Chevron doctrine and held that federal courts should no longer defer to federal agencies' interpretations of the law or their own rulemaking authority. Together, these cases suggest that a plethora of current federal regulations exceed the authority Congress has granted under the law. DOGE will work with legal experts embedded in government agencies, aided by advanced technology, to apply these rulings to federal regulations enacted by such agencies. So, legal experts embedded in government agencies, aided by advanced technology. So, they're going to have their particular appointees in the agencies who will be aided by large language models. DOGE will present this list of regulations to President Trump, who can, by executive action, immediately pause the enforcement of those regulations and initiate the process for review and rescission. This would liberate individuals and businesses from illicit regulations never passed by Congress and stimulate the U.S. economy. When the president nullifies thousands of such regulations, critics will allege executive overreach. In fact, it will be correcting the executive overreach of thousands of regulations promulgated by administrative fiat that were never authorized by Congress. The president owes lawmaking deference to Congress, not to bureaucrats deep within federal agencies. The use of executive orders to substitute for lawmaking by adding burdensome new rules is a constitutional affront. But the use of executive orders to roll back regulations that wrongly bypass Congress is legitimate and necessary to comply with the Supreme Court's recent mandates. And after those regulations are fully rescinded, a future president couldn't simply flip the switch and revive them, but would instead have to ask Congress to do so. A drastic reduction in federal regulations provides sound industrial logic for mass headcount reductions across the federal bureaucracy. DOGE intends to work with embedded appointees and agencies to identify the minimum number of employees required at an agency for it to perform its constitutionally permissible and statutorily mandated functions. The number of federal employees to cut should be at least proportionate to the number of federal regulations that are nullified. Not only are fewer employees required to enforce fewer regulations, but the agency would produce fewer regulations once its scope of authority is properly limited. Employees whose positions are eliminated deserve to be treated with respect, and DOGE's goal is to help support their transition into the private sector. The president can use existing laws to give them incentives for early retirement and to make voluntary severance payments to facilitate a graceful exit. Conventional wisdom holds that statutory civil service protections stop the president or even his political appointees from firing federal workers. The purpose of these protections is to protect employees from political retaliation. But the statute allows for reductions in force that don't target specific employees. The statute further empowers the president to prescribe rules governing the competitive service. That power is broad. Previous presidents have used it to amend the civil service rules by executive order, and the Supreme Court has held, in Franklin v. Massachusetts 1992 and Collins v. Yellen 2021, that they weren't constrained by the Administrative Procedures Act when they did so. With this authority, Mr. Trump can implement any number of rules governing the competitive service that would curtail administrative overgrowth, from large-scale firings to relocation of federal agencies out of the Washington area. Requiring federal employees to come to the office 5 days a week would result in a wave of voluntary terminations that we welcome. If federal employees don't want to show up, American taxpayers shouldn't pay them for the COVID-era privilege of staying home. Finally, we are focused on delivering cost savings for taxpayers. Skeptics question how much federal spending DOGE contained through executive action alone. They point to the 1974 Impoundment Control Act, which stops the president from ceasing expenditures authorized by Congress. Mr. Trump has previously suggested this statute is unconstitutional, and we believe the current Supreme Court would likely side with him on this question. But even without relying on that view, DOGE will help end federal overspending by taking aim at the $500 billion plus in annual federal expenditures that are unauthorized by Congress or being used in ways that Congress never intended, from $535 million a year to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and $1.5 billion for grants to international organizations to nearly $300 million to progressive groups like Planned Parenthood. The federal government's procurement process is also badly broken. Many federal contracts have gone unexamined for years. Large-scale audits conducted during a temporary suspension of payments would yield significant savings. The Pentagon recently failed its 7th consecutive audit, suggesting that the agency's leadership has little idea how its annual budget of more than $800 billion is spent. Critics claim we can't meaningfully close the federal deficit without taking aim at entitlement programs like Medicare and Medicaid, which require Congress to shrink. But this deflects attention from the sheer magnitude of waste, fraud, and abuse that nearly all taxpayers wish to end, and that DOGE aims to address by identifying pinpoint executive actions that would result in immediate savings for taxpayers. With a decisive electoral mandate and a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court, DOGE has a historic opportunity for structural reductions in the federal government. We are prepared for the onslaught from entrenched interests in Washington. We expect to prevail. Now is the moment for decisive action. Our top goal for DOGE is to eliminate the need for its existence by July 4, 2026, the expiration date we have set for our project. There is no better birthday gift to our nation on its 250th anniversary than to deliver a federal government that would make our founders proud. So there's a number of different things here. and I think it's great to see that they're setting an anticipated expiration date. They're creating the narrative around it. This is the expiration date for a birthday gift for the 250th anniversary. This also happens to be before the next elections. So by setting it for this period of time, you potentially, if they could follow through on it, eliminate the risk of spinning up a federal bureaucracy that then gets populated by their enemies and weaponized against them. So by making it independent, it removes that possibility to a greater lesser extent. By setting at the outset, this is our anticipated, like if it exists beyond this point, we've failed. That's a decent amount of pressure to place on themselves. And then you can see the way that they're going to function is primarily through being like an independent advisory board that does all the legwork, but is funded privately with a small team directly answerable to Vivek and Elon, who, coming from the private sector the way they have, are much more inclined toward being very efficient and pragmatic and productive, and not bureaucratic and bloated and wasteful. So all the work of creating of accumulating all the info and laying out the pathway for actually effectively rolling back these different regulations and bureaucracies and all this different stuff, DOGE will handle all of that independently and produce the results of it to the president without having to funnel everything through enemy territory effectively. I also expect that they're likely, they're going to have significant funding, and I expect that they're likely going to be, in certain cases, filing lawsuits and pushing some of these things to get them to the Supreme Court to get rulings on various different issues, or at least that's a contingency possibility that's there as a fallback if necessary. All right. I have a clip here. I guess I got this a little bit out of order. But this one's funny. This is Thomas Massey dunking on John Kerry. And I love me a good Thomas Massey clip.
Isn't it true you have a science degree from Yale?
Bachelor of Arts degree.
Is it a political science degree?
Yes, political science.
So how do you get a Bachelor of Arts in a science?
Well, it's liberal arts education and degree. It's a bachelor.
Okay, so it's not really science. So I think it's somewhat appropriate that somebody with a pseudoscience degree is here pushing pseudoscience in front of our committee today. Let's get back to the science of it. Let me ask you this. What's the consensus on parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere?
About 406 today.
Okay, 406. Are you aware?
350 being the level that scientists have said is dangerous.
Are you aware that since mammals have walked the planet, the average has been over 1,000 parts per million?
Yeah, but we weren't walking the planet. Let me just share with you that we now know that definitively at no point during at least the past 800,000 years has atmospheric CO2 been as high as it is today.
The reason you chose 800,000 years ago is because for 200 million years before that, it was greater than it is today. And I'm going to submit for the record.
Yeah, but there weren't human beings. I mean, there was a different world, folks. We didn't have 7 billion people.
So how did it get to 2,000 parts per million if we humans weren't here?
Because there were all kinds of geologic events happening on Earth which spewed up.
Did geology stop when we got on the planet?
Mr. Chairman, this is just not a serious conversation.
Your testimony is not serious.
I love how Massey set him up with that by first MIT Massey first establishes the hollowness of his credentials. He's like, "You're no science man," and then proceeds to disembowel him. Now I remember why I put this clip here, because it's a lead-in to the next thing here. Let me reply to something here. Kate said, she said, "I like the idea of a Doge cast, like a good NGO fireside chat." Yes, that was the other thing I was going to mention, is that another function of the DOGE in concert with Twitter is that whatever they can't accomplish, or in concert with whatever they're accomplishing, they can publicize it. So they're going to come out, like Kevin O'Leary said in the clip I played on yesterday's show. Elon now is going to use Twitter and the Doge cast platform to air out all the dirty laundry. So the shoe is now completely on the other foot, where this media apparatus is going to be trained at the agents of the deep state and shining a light on them. You know, like you could imagine an episode where they're like, we're having a real hard time getting this particular thing accomplished because this guy and this guy and this guy are standing in our way. And here's their history. Here's how they got to where they are. Here's all the corrupt interests and stuff they're associated with. And here's how they're personally benefiting from this corrupt policy. And they're going to have millions of people watching this. So it seems like the Doge, being an independent agency, an independent entity that can kind of pincer the deep state is honestly, I think it's quite brilliant. Samoa Bob said the libs seem to think that Doge isn't going to do anything, but I think they should be afraid that Elon is not encumbered by being a federal employee. Yes, absolutely. One other question here. A little off topic. Michael Hassler says, King Pilled, what's your view on What If Alt Hist? I like him. I think he's obviously autistic. Like, he's got a legendary case of autism, which is why he can consume such a massive load of information and synthesize it all and produce it the way he does. And you got to take him for what he is. Don't expect him to be something he's not. He's also young. So you got to discount some of the things he says just from simple fact of him being, a guy in his early 20s. But he's much smarter and more mature than the average guy in his early 20s. He's way ahead of the curve for compared to his peers. So I find him entertaining. I enjoy his content. I watch his stuff from time to time. The one complaint that I do have, and again, I have to attribute to this to, he has autism, is he does these video essays, but the majority of the content, the visual content, isn't really all that necessary. Like, you're just listening to him talk. But every once in a while, he has a wall of text, and he doesn't give you any auditory signal that there's a wall of text there. So if you're just listening, you won't get that wall of text. You won't know that it passed, and he doesn't reference it at all, so you don't know that it passed. And he talks about information in the wall of text that he doesn't necessarily talk about in his audio content. So it, it just, if you're gonna make a video, make a video. If you're gonna make audio content, make audio content. But whatever. He's obviously been much more successful than I have. He's got a huge following, and he's way more well read than I am. So I'm not gonna. I'll quibble a little bit, but in general, I like him, and I know people who know him personally. So all the, he's a fad or whatever. It's bullshit. He's an autistic guy who loves to read history and construct these elaborate models of reality that, hey, he's putting himself out. He's you might not like the model of reality that he constructed, but he did it. And he put it out there to be challenged and tested, and if it fails, then it fails, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. So that's my take on What If Alt Hist. I like him. So Brian Romelli tweeted, magnetic north is now drifting faster than 30 miles per year. It has already moved back past geological north, a place it has not been for thousands of years. So you have the geographical North Pole, then you've got the magnetic north. And you could see from the dates here, in 1600, it was up in Northern Europe. And then it has, not Northern Europe. This is up above Canada. And it's kind of wandered around, and then now it's been moving all the way back. And in 2025, it's going to be back up very close to the actual geographic North Pole. And Elon said, we live on a thin crust of solid rock beneath which is vast ball of molten rock. Earth's core, which generates most of our magnetic field, is approximately 85% iron and moves independently from the surface plates, which is why the magnetic pole changes position. And Robbie Starbucks said, what do you think will happen when the magnetic pole fully shifts? I've heard of varying positions on this. Now, this isn't quite the right question. It's not that the magnetic pole fully shifts. It's when the actual poles themselves shift. So this pole shift theory that has been posited for a while and is starting to gain more and more purchase on the expert mind. There's some governments that are even contingency planning for this type of thing. The actual pole shift itself is when you have that core and then you have the crust, and the crust shifts on the core. So if you imagine it as like the skin around the fruit of an orange, and if you were to rotate the skin, like you were to keep the fruit of the orange stationary and you were to rotate the skin around, it would be something like that happening. There's a lot of evidence that something like this has occurred and may occur periodically. And if it does occur periodically, then there's it's likely to happen at some point. We're coming up on the interval when that sort of thing does happen. If and it's like for certain parts of the country or for certain parts of the world, assuming this model is true and assuming it does happen, certain parts of the world get obliterated. You're talking like the ocean relocates itself across the continent, and it gets, you know, you might have something that was at the equator and now it's at the pole. So it goes from tropical climate, it gets swamped by an entire ocean, and then winds up in a frigid polar climate, and everything gets completely reset. Justin says, never thought they assumed a physical shift. It's a magnetic polarity flip they're talking about, right? No, there's an actual physical shift that's theorized as well. There's something called the Janet Beckhoff effect. And if you go to The Ethical Skeptic on Twitter, he's got some really interesting stuff that he's written about this. I've bookmarked it. Maybe I'll get into it on a show at some point. It all gets really technical and a lot of it's over my head, but I can generally I can kind of generally grok it. But there's like two separate conversations here. Does this actually happen? Is this going to happen again in the near future, which are themselves kind of two separate conversations. And then there's, do people believe this could happen? And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of very wealthy, very well-connected people who are convinced that this is going to happen. They are building plans for the eventuality that something like this happens. And I think this is part of why there is such a big push by Elon for getting to Mars. I think it's not the only reason, but I think this is one of the reasons. So here's this video again of Starship. I got a couple great Devin Erickson things to read you guys. So that kind of gives you a gives you a visual. So Devin says, this video looks neat, yes, but you must think deeper to really understand it. It isn't just one booster returning coincidentally as another one takes off. It's a vision of the future. This is a conveyor belt. Rocket goes up, rocket delivers payload on its way to orbit, rocket comes back, rocket picks up new load, pre-flight check, rocket goes up. All automated, forever. A launch every day, then a launch every hour, then every 15 minutes, then as fast as humanity can make it. Then 2 sites, 4 sites, 8, 16, 32. Raw tonnage to orbit as fast and cheap as possible. But why? What's up there? Everything. Read my article on the post-terrestrial economy for details, but it works like this. The point is to lift humanity's entire tech stack out of the gravity well. Why? It's not just so you have a manufacturing base outside of Earth because you like space or something, or you think a city on Mars would be neato. No, it's because Earth is holding us back. An extraterrestrial manufacturing base allows tremendous leaps in scale and efficiency. See the Trillionaires of Mars article for details, but here's the takeaway. This is what I'm going to read you guys in just a minute. We are taking our tech stack out of the gravity well to scale it up, improve it, and reach the next level of civilization. But before you can take advantage of everything the solar system has to offer, you have to get our current manufacturing capability out of the gravity well so you can kick off the process. That means all our tools, from screwdrivers to plasma cutters and 6-axis CNC machines, shipped up to orbit and Earth escape, whole or in parts, on the conveyor belt. How much? Well, how much does civilization weigh? At what cost? Well, as cheap as we can, but in another sense, who cares? Because it's worth any price. It's humanity's next move, and the technological singularity is our end game. This is everything, but to understand that, you have to learn to think big again. So here is the Trillionaires of Mars article. This is from Devin Substack at devinerickson.substack.com, and that's Erickson. It's DEVONERIKSEN.substack.com. The Trillionaires of Mars. Head up, young man. The first entity to establish a Mars colony will be the universe's first trillionaire. Lately, we've had a lot of puddlefish whining about how we shouldn't go to Mars. Some of them actually think they get a vote based on economic illiteracy and the delusion that SpaceX is somehow part of the U.S. federal government. Closed caption for the heart of thinking. It isn't. But others just think they're giving good investment advice. SpaceX investors can do what they want, but Mars is a frozen wasteland full of nothing but near vacuum and rocks. So why would anyone want to go there? Elon Musk likes to answer this question by pointing out that it's not a good idea to store all humanity's eggs in one basket. He's right, but this kind of argument isn't comprehensible to everyone, nor is the full picture. So now it's the SF writer's turn, and therefore I present to you an economic roadmap for the future of humanity, in which Devin Erickson explains how to bring about a second industrial revolution and what the next step is on the road to becoming a Kardashev 1 civilization. The invention of manufacturing and the transition from an agricultural to a manufacturing economy is called the Industrial Revolution because its effect on the state of not only the economy, but daily life in the entire human world was revolutionary, unprecedented, unimaginable, understandable only in hindsight. Everything changed. Imagine trying to describe the modern world to your pre-industrial ancestors. We took that black stuff that seeps out of the ground, set it on fire, and used the fire to turn things that do the work of skilled craftsmen, only thousands of times faster, and now we all have horseless carriages and talking abacuses that can send a message to the other side of the planet in the time it takes to cough. This would sound like nonsense, because to them, tar was just sticky black stuff that you find in the bottom of bogs, and coal was a dirty rock, and steam was the stuff that came out of your tea kettle. And Mars, well, Mars is just a frozen, airless desert, right? To bring about technological and economic revolutions, you have to learn to see value in new ways. The conquistadors who first introduced civilization to the Americas were looking for spices and gold. That was their definition of value. But if all they found was gold, all they would have gained was an unprecedented economic crisis. With their pre-industrial knowledge of economics, they didn't understand that gold was a token of value, not a store of value. A massive influx of gold alone would have brought about unprecedented inflation. Ouch. Fortunately for Europe, civilization, and humanity, they found real value as well of sorts they were looking for. Land, timber, navigable rivers, potatoes. Yes, potatoes. Laugh it up, fuzzball, but potatoes allow you to feed populations you just couldn't before, with less farmers. That means more workers, more craftsmen, more geniuses to invent things, more civilization. Potatoes. Unexpected, but valuable. So what about Mars? Mars is just a frozen, airless desert, right? Well, for those of you who can read between the blatantly obvious lines, maybe not. But how? Well, what do you need for an industrial revolution? You need a new source of cheaper energy. The first one had wood, coal, and oil, replacing animal labor and wind turbines, which are only suitable for grinding flour for medieval peasants. You need cheap raw materials. The New World abounded with timber and ore, and bigger populations from better crops and new energy sources meant cheaper mining. You need clever people to figure out new technologies. The West was never short of smart people, and now they had more than ever, thanks to the potatoes. You need a permissive legal environment. Enterprises that push the technological envelope tend not to be established companies trying something new. These entities already have their revenue model. Instead, new tech comes from startups, all the way from well-funded high-tech enterprises to the often surprising ingenuity of three dudes in a shed. The first industrial revolution had America and England, which at the time were quite capitalist. Cheap energy, cheap raw materials, technically educated people, free market capitalism. In order to have a new industrial revolution, you needed an order of magnitude increase in some, or ideally all, of these things. Now we're ready to answer the question, why Mars? The next level of the human economy is post-terrestrial, and it rests on 3 pillars as its foundation: Earth, the asteroid belt, and Mars. Earth. Right now, Earth is everything. It's where we keep all of our stuff. In the future, Earth is merely very important. It's where people want to live. It's the swanky real estate. It's not only where you store most of your people, it's where you especially store anyone who works with data, and therefore doesn't have to be in any particular place to do his work. Earth is the suburbs. It's the Hamptons. It's Myrtle Beach and Key Largo. In the near future, it's also where your food comes from, but in a post-terrestrial economy, that changes quickly with hydroponics and genetic engineering. And this is where the permaculture emphasis of RFK is very interesting when paired with terraforming. The asteroid belt is where your accessible raw materials are, and it beats Earth not just by an order of magnitude, but by many. To understand why, here's physics lesson number 1, gravity wells. We've all heard the local gravitational fields of planets referred to as wells, but to fully understand, we really need to lean into the metaphor. It explains a lot. Imagine Earth's gravity as a deep, deep pit. Steep sides hard to get out of, and heavy stuff sinks to the bottom. Don't believe me? Can't fully visualize it? Try it yourself. Fill a jar with sand, water, and lead buckshot. Shake the jar, watch it sort itself. Layer of buckshot at the bottom, layer of sand on top of that, clear water at the top. Yes, the lighter stuff will fill the gaps in the heavier stuff, but all the heavier stuff will sink to the bottom. Well, the Earth is like the jar. It's got a core of iron and heavy radioactive elements, and the lighter stuff is on top. The only heavy elements and metals we can mine on Earth are the small amounts near the surface, which are there because the Earth isn't as fluid and hasn't been shaken quite as hard as that jar. Which means that the Earth is a metal-poor, heavy element-poor environment. We just don't think of it that way because it's what we're used to. And it's a major bottleneck holding our industrial development back. Not because these elements will run out, but because the expense of extracting them limits availability and drives costs up. So what about the asteroid belt? Well, the mass of the asteroid belt is roughly 0.05% of Earth's mass. But unlike the Earth, the asteroid belt isn't a big lump of material sitting at its own steep gravity well. It's a powder, a spray of fine dust orbiting the sun. The largest asteroid is only about the size of Texas, and most are much smaller. And the thing about powder is that it has a really high ratio of surface area to mass. Everything is near the surface because surface is all there is. Not only can you cut in easily, you can break the whole rock apart to get at the valuable stuff inside. And is there ever valuable stuff inside? One single asteroid, 16 Psyche, some 140 miles across, has an estimated value at today's market prices of $100 quadrillion. You read that right. That's roughly 900 times the value of the entire world economy. All of civilization, everything. One asteroid. Now, does that mean it would actually sell for that much? Of course not. What would happen if you extracted all that stuff is that the market prices of all those metals and heavy elements would crash. They'd all become dirt cheap. In fact, that's a poor metaphor because dirt would be a lot more expensive than iron. We'd be making bullets out of gold. But unlike the gold the conquistadors brought back, these metals aren't just tokens of value only useful as currency because they are rare. They have inherent value because you make stuff out of them. So all the stuff you can make out of them would get a whole lot cheaper. That's pretty much everything. But what about all the energy we would need? Well, space solves that too. If you're close to the sun and you have some kind of solar panel fetish, you use those. No air in space, no weather, nothing to get in the way, just point them at the big bright thing for free electricity. If you're not close to the sun or you just don't like dicking around with second-rate methods, well, there's plenty of everything in the asteroid belt, including fissionables. Really, the energy problem has been solved for over 50 years, but that solution has been held back. See, on Earth, we have these things called governments, which is a fancy way for a bunch of theater kids who studied liberal arts in college and aren't good at anything but stuffing ballot boxes and taking bribes. Their hobbies include banning things they don't understand, regulating things they don't understand, and visiting their best buddy Jeff on his private island. But there aren't any of them in space. And if they go there, well, good luck enforcing your regulations on a volume of 3.59 times 10 to the 30th cubic kilometers. So fissionables, the real energy solution until we solve fusion containment, are back on the menu. The fact that traditional territory-based governments don't work so well in space also solves our need for free market capitalism. So, cheap energy, cheap raw materials, free market capitalism, and smart, technically educated people. It's all there. Mars. Around now, someone will be objecting that asteroid mining ain't so cheap. Sure, all that shiny stuff is lying around in plain view, but getting there is really, really difficult, at least for now. Yes, that's true. But how is it difficult? In exactly what way? Time for physics lesson number 1. This one is also about gravity wells. If you go back to thinking about a planet's gravity as a well or pit, then you can think about the solar system as a sort of flat surface, actually a gently sloping bowl due to the gravity of the distant sun, with deep pits in it representing the planet's gravity. Well, the hard part is getting out of that pit. The reason rocket science, actually rocket engineering, is so hard that it's a euphemism for really hard stuff is that we live in a really deep gravity pit. Earth's gravity exerts a constant acceleration of about 10 meters per second on everything near its surface. That means that everything near the surface is going to fall, picking up speed until it finds something to rest on. To accelerate upwards so fast that you rise up out of the pit despite gravity, you need a powerful engine and a lot of fuel and something called reaction mass, which you don't need to worry about reading this beyond knowing that all those things are heavy. Because they're heavy, you need a still more powerful engine and still more fuel / oxidizer / reaction mass, which are heavy, and on and on and on it goes. But if you can do all of that really, really hard engineering and get out of that pit, then the gravity acceleration you must overcome to move away from the Earth is 0.006 meters per second, which you could easily do by farting. So Earth's gravity well is a climbing wall, but at the top of the climbing wall is a skating rink, and it's really easy to glide around. So much of the difficulty, if not much of the delay, in travel to the asteroid belt is getting off Earth's front driveway. But what about Mars? Well, Mars's gravity acceleration is about a third of Earth's, a little over 3.5 meters per second squared. Rocket science is not so difficult on Mars. Closed caption for the heart of thinking. Devin is speaking comparatively. Rocket engineering is still difficult. So if you think SpaceX can move stuff to Earth orbit cheaply now with their fancy reusable rocket boosters and all their light years ahead of NASA space tech and their $2 million Starship launches, you ain't seen nothing yet. On Mars, with its 1/3 gravity and thin atmosphere, you wouldn't even need a rocket to achieve escape velocity. Just fling stuff into space with a big railgun. That's why Mars. The value of Mars isn't the balmy weather, the fresh air, or even Deja Thoris and a chainmail bikini. No idea if I pronounced that right. I'm not a sci-fi nerd. It's the fact that here you have a planet where people can live in sealed habitats above or below the surface, and it's really, really easy to throw things into space and get them to and from the asteroid belt. In other words, if Earth is the suburbs and the belt is the mine, Mars is your industrial zone. Hell, you don't even need to mine asteroids in place. Depending on the delta V cost, you could just attach boosters to your smaller rocks and push them right into Mars orbit. It's called a Hohmann transfer. But whether you are moving metal from a mobile refinery, raw ore, or entire rocks, cargo is cheap to move in space, at least compared to space launch from Earth's surface. Space isn't an ocean, you see. There are no waves, your cargo can't sink, and there's no air to slow it down. So you don't load it up into a ship and sail the ship somewhere. That's pre-spaceflight thinking. What you do is tie your cargo in a big bundle, give it a carefully aimed push, and glide into a Mars orbit. Then you make stuff out of it in your factories on Mars. Then you toss it to Earth. Takes a while gliding through the void, but so what? There's no crew to get bored or breathe up all the oxygen. You just wait patiently and catch it on the far end. Sure, re-entry is a bit of a problem and you need heat shields and stuff, but that's a hell of a lot easier problem than making a rocket go. And you don't bother moving a lot of it to Earth because you can have all or at least most of your near-Earth industry on the moon. No re-entry necessary. Got all that? If so, we are finally done. You now understand this. A Mars colony is the next step in human civilization. It is not a token explanatory feat, but a critical center point of the post-terrestrial economy. This is how humanity ascends. Instead of dicking around on one single planet, fighting stupid little wars over stupid little oil fields and generally being the galactic equivalent of a bunch of stupid tribal yaboos with stone-tipped arrows and bone through our noses. You and I and everyone else alive today are unfortunate enough to live in humanity's embarrassingly primitive poo-flinging monkey period. But if we're not too stupid or ignorant to imagine what the next step looks like, we can lay the foundation for getting there. Don't be a puddlefish. I just generally really enjoy reading Devin's writing. It's great. You should go subscribe to him, devinerickson.substack.com. I think, I mean, I don't share a worldview with Devin entirely, so I have to discount a little bit of the commentary on like humanity ascending and all of that. But I think if you're operating from the framework of like you had the old world and then the new world and all of the attendant incentives with the new world and the move to the new world and the harvesting of the new world and the civilizing and the settling of the new world and the way that transformed government structures and generated a new world. the same model exists. Like that is what going to space is. Now, incidentally, I don't think that's the only domain like this. I think the digital domain, I think cyberspace is very similar. And I think we've penetrated the digital world about as much as we've penetrated space. And I do have to give all the necessary what's the term I'm thinking of here? Disclaimers about, is space real? Jury's out for me, because obviously it's very important that I weigh in on it. Is space real? Is the Earth actually a sphere with the molten core and all that? Like whatever. I don't care. What does matter is that people do believe that that's the case, and people are acting and putting tremendous amounts of investment into that being the case. So we'll find out. Who knows? But I do think that you've got the sovereign debt collapse, the collapse in the offshore dollar market. Then you've got the space race. You've got the digital asset space, and you've got how would I categorize everything else? I think underlying all of that is the Americanist urge or instinct to recapitalize America, to reshore American production and manufacturing, and exercise control over our own currency. All of these things are all coming to a head at the same time, and all these interests are intersecting at the MAGA coalition. So I think the next 4 years are going to be profoundly transformative. I'm prepping some clips, and I'm thinking about bringing a certain someone on to discuss the state of Bitcoin, and particularly what MicroStrategy is up to right now with Michael Saylor and the connections that Saylor has to the Trump administration. Because then you've got Bitcoin, you've got El Salvador with the Trump administration, you got El Salvador with Matt Gaetz, you've got the Bitcoin connection with the immigration, with the crime, all these things. You got this build a Caesar model, and I did see you guys earlier voting on is it Caesar or Kaiser, and I think we say Kaiser. It's build a Kaiser. So the build a Kaiser model. Yeah, I don't know. I've been spending a lot of time the last few days trying to put all these things together in my head and try to truly wrap my mind around how these different things are all going to play out. But the conclusion I've come to at this point so far is things are going to change very, very rapidly. And in some ways, they're going to get really, really bad, really, really fast. But correspondingly, they're also going to get really, really good, really, really fast. And what we individually experience is going to really come down to the decisions that we make, the choices that we make every day, and what we choose to align ourselves with. There's going to be, in a manner of speaking, manna raining from heaven. And if you're ready to go pick it up, and you have your basket to go pick it up in, then you're gonna be prepared to do that, and you can benefit from it. And if not, if you're just sitting in your tent bemoaning the absence of manna, then you won't see it. Anyways, last thing I've got here for you guys is a nice little thing we can laugh at. This is a not safe for work clip, so if you're playing this around children, I'll give you a fair warning that you should put on headphones or something like that. But this is funny. This is the late, great Sam Kinison's take on how to solve world hunger. Do me a favor and hit the like button, folks. We're at 91. See if we can get to 100 before I give you guys Hulk.
If you want to stop world hunger, stop sending them food. Don't send these people another bite, folks. You want to send them something? You want to help? Send them U-Hauls. Send them U-Hauls, some luggage, send them a guy out there that goes, hey, You know, we've been driving out here every day with your food for like the last, 30, 40 years. And we were driving out here a day across the desert, and it occurred to us there wouldn't be world hunger if you people would live where the food is! You live in a desert! You understand that? You live in a fucking desert! Nothing grows out here! Nothing's gonna grow out here! You see this? Huh? See this? This is sand. Yeah. It's sand. You know it's gonna be 100 years from now, huh? It's gonna be sand! We'll take you to where the food is! We have deserts in America, we just don't live in them, asshole!
What's up with his hair? What the hell is that? What happened to that hairstyle? It's like this is an artifact of the past. It looks like Leia. Anyways, appreciate you guys showing up here for today. I'm going to go tend to my throbbing left eye. And I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Astrolabe. Do me a favor and hit the like button. We're at 93. Need 7 more likes. I appreciate the super chats you guys dropped today. Go to kingpill.com, join the King Pill Discord, and you can also get access to the King Pill Telegram channel where I dropped the Q Proofs documentary that I mentioned yesterday or the day before, whenever I did. It'll be good to see you guys there. I know I said that. Wait a second. What is today? Is today Tuesday or Wednesday? Yeah, today's Wednesday. So we're gonna try to do. I said I wanted to do the Schizo stream on a Wednesday or Thursday, but I'm not going to be able to do it tonight. And I'm going to be going out to dinner with my dad. Family's going out to dinner with my dad tomorrow because he's in town for work. So we'll probably just be doing the Schizo stream on Friday again this week, even though I'm trying to get away from Fridays. So if you want to be a part of that, come join the King Pill Discord, kingpill.com. You can be a part of the top secret group. And there's a link in the description. Make sure you go get your Patriot drop. Don't forget about the top secret transmission. It's still coming, folks. 24/7 radio for our guys is coming. EWBSX.com is the place to go for that. Click the link in the description here and get your Patriot drop so you can know the lore. All right. Oinks in the chat in honor of Pig Dirk, and I give you guys Hulk.
They're my hero. And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said